What's more valuable? Owning a $2 million home that costs $5,000 a month to upkeep, or receiving $500 a month after tax? Now most people chase the first, but only the second will get you free because, you see, cash flow and net worth tell two very different stories. They give you insight on your financial health, but from two different lenses. And depending on where you are in life, one can be vastly superior than the other. Let's explain. Alright, this is Finance Mindset. So, starting off, we're going to talk about net worth. At its core, your net worth is the total value of everything you own minus everything you owe. It's a simple equation. Net worth equals assets minus liabilities. Assets are everything you own that holds value. Your cash, stocks, real estate, jewelry, businesses, even that one painting you're convinced is worth something. And liabilities are what you owe to somebody else. Mortgages, credit cards, student loans, personal debt. If you sold everything you own and paid off every debt tomorrow, what's left over is your net worth. This is a helpful way to get a snapshot of your overall financial position. It tells you where you are, but not how fast or flexible you can move. Now, if you take a look at a generational view, you'll see a few different things. Boomers held around 21% of total US wealth by age 35. Gen X had about 9% at the same age, and millennials, which is most of you watching this, own just 6% by the same age. Generation after generation, people have an increasingly lower net worth by the same age. Despite rising education levels, salaries, and productivity, the younger generations are starting adulthood with far fewer assets. But this graphic tells another story. Almost everyone has a net worth only on paper. You see, for roughly 80% of people, their net worth is made up of just two things: the house they live in and their retirement accounts like pensions or a 401k. And you can't really sell your living room to pay rent, nor can you dip into your 401k without penalties unless you're already retired. This introduces a more useful concept: liquid net worth, meaning the money you can actually access, move, or use in the short term without taking a hit. So, let's look at two people with the same net worth. Person A owns a $500,000 home and has $300,000 in retirement savings. That's $800,000 in net worth. Not bad. The problem is this person can only access that money if they sell the house and fully retire. Person B has $800,000 in a mix of index funds, rental properties, and cash. Their money is working and accessible. Same net worths, two completely different stories. Most people think they're building wealth when they buy a home, but what they're really building is a very expensive savings account they can't touch. What's more, your net worth can be negative too. In fact, most people have a negative net worth, especially early in life. Let's say you're 23 years old, you just finished college, and you took out a student loan. You owe $40,000 in student debt. You've got like $1,000 in your checking account with no other major assets. Your net worth is minus $39,000. That doesn't mean you're failing though, it means your financial life is still front-loaded with debt. Most high-earning professionals like doctors, lawyers, and engineers start their careers with a negative net worth. So, with that being said, when is knowing your net worth useful? Well, track your financial progress over time. If your net worth was $80,000 last year and it's $100,000 now, you're moving forward. If it's going down, it means something needs your attention. Knowing your net worth also helps you to plan. Can you take on more debt? Are you over-leveraged in one asset? Do you need to diversify? Think of your net worth as your financial weight over time. And you know, there are even net worth calculators which you can check out on the Play Store. It measures how well off you'll be when you're old based on what you currently have and compared to others in your segment. So if net worth shows how well you're doing over time, well, cash flow shows how well you're doing right now. So what is cash flow really? Well, essentially all of the money that moves through your life is cash flow. It's the actual income you receive on a regular basis minus your expenses. So to put it simply, cash flow equals income minus expenses. It can come from your salary, dividends, rental income, royalties, side hustles, or any source that regularly puts money into your account. Positive cash flow means you're earning more than you're spending. Negative cash flow means you're slowly bleeding, even if your net worth looks good on paper. According to data from the Bank of America Institute, about 1 in 5 American households live paycheck to paycheck, even those earning over $150,000 a year. In simple terms, they're spending nearly everything they earn. Their income comes in, it goes out, and honestly, nothing really stays. That's how you end up with people living in million-dollar homes who look wealthy on paper, but are just one missed paycheck away from a financial crisis. What makes cash flow so important is it gives you options. Options like working from anywhere or running a remote business. Now, working remotely sounds like freedom, right? And yeah, it is. Until you're logging into your accounts from a hotel Wi-Fi or reviewing contracts from a coffee shop halfway across the world. That's when you realize freedom isn't just about where you can work, it's about knowing your systems are strong enough to support you anywhere. Think about it. You could be managing client files from a cafe in Tokyo, uploading new content while staying in Paris, or keeping an eye on your banking dashboard during a long layover. What matters most is that your income stream remains secure, your focus protected, and your business stable even when you're not at home, because freedom only works if the foundation behind it is bulletproof, and once you get that part right, your options expand without limits. This is why cash flow equals freedom. Okay, people talk about financial freedom like it's a number of some sort. They say once I hit 1 million, I'm free. But real freedom doesn't come from the number, okay? It comes from the reliability of the income. If you're earning $5,000 a month in passive or semi-passive income, and you spend less than that, you are technically speaking financially free. It doesn't matter what your net worth says. That's the difference between wealth on paper and wealth in motion. In fact, most people who retire early don't do it by hoarding $10 million in net worth. They do it by covering their monthly costs with predictable income, rental income, dividends, royalties, LP payouts, and everything else we talked about in the passive income episode. The takeaway here is if your income covers your lifestyle without requiring your time, you are functionally free. Predictability is actually more important than the amount. That is why businesses and investors, really chase recurring revenue. Because when income is predictable, you can optimize around it. You can plan your expenses, take risks, and even build new things. If your cash flow stops, you're constantly on the defense, no matter how rich you might look on paper. So, how does one build a cash flow system that is reliable and scalable? Glad you asked, imaginary voice in our head. Well, here's the ladder that most people climb. Okay, step 1, earn active income. That's the money you make by directly trading your time for work. You get a job, a contract, maybe start freelancing or selling a skill. This is honestly how most people begin their financial journey. And frankly, this is where most of them also get stuck. They earn money, they spend it, and just repeat the cycle. But cash flow doesn't come from working harder. It comes from working smarter and widening the gap between what you earn and what you keep. That is the next step. Step 2, increase the margins. So, margins are what's left over after life gets paid. The rent, the groceries, the subscriptions, the dinners out. If your monthly income is $4,000 and you spend $3,500, your margin is $500. That is your seed money, the dry powder you use to build freedom. There are 2 ways to increase your margins, okay? Earn more or spend less. Most people focus on earning more, which is fine, but without spending discipline, income just scales your lifestyle, not your wealth. You go from a $30,000 life to a $60,000 life to a $120,000 life, and you're still broke at every level. That's lifestyle inflation, the silent killer of financial freedom. But if you can increase your income and cap your lifestyle, you unlock real leverage. Okay, that is when your margin turns into something useful, capital. Which brings us to step 3, reinvest into income-generating assets. So, this is where your cash flow journey actually begins. Instead of letting your money sit idly, you put it to work. Maybe it's dividend-paying stocks, maybe it's rental property, maybe it's a content channel, a small digital product, or even buying into somebody else's business as a limited partner. The goal is income, recurring, somewhat predictable money that doesn't depend on you showing up every day. These are things that we talked about in the passive income episode, but assets don't manage themselves. Which brings us to step 4, systemize income. Because here you start removing yourself from the equation, automating investments, outsourcing the management, delegating operations. You make it easier to maintain and grow your income without being hands-on 24/7. If you own real estate, that could mean hiring a property manager. If you build content, it could mean building a team to run the production or ad funnels. If you're investing, it could mean automatic contributions to dividend ETFs or scheduling capital calls with private equity funds. The more systemized your income becomes, the closer you get to true scalability, where your time isn't the bottleneck anymore. Then there's step 5, do it for long enough until you cover your monthly expenses. That is when cash flow becomes freedom. Your basic life like rent, food, bills, even a few luxuries is already paid for by the machine you built. At that point, work kind of becomes optional because you see, traditional retirement is a myth. For decades, retirement was sold as some kind of destination. You work for 40 years, you save a portion of every paycheck, you buy a house, build up a retirement account, and by the time age 65 rolls around, you've got enough to stop working. But that model made one big assumption, that your net worth would eventually be enough to carry you through the last 20 to 30 years of your life without a paycheck. And for most people, that assumption just doesn't hold up anymore. The numbers do not add up. According to the Federal Reserve, the median retirement account balance of Americans aged 55 to 64 is $185,000. For ages 35 to 44, it's just $39,000. Nearly half of people aged 55 plus have saved nothing for retirement, and that is in the US, a relatively high-income country. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that the average retiree household spends around $52,000 a year. Do the math, okay? Even if you've saved $500,000, You're only covering about 10 years without factoring in inflation, emergencies, or rising healthcare costs. So unless you've been maxing out retirement contributions from day one and living extremely lean, that magic number might not exist. So here's the mindset shift, okay? Retirement isn't some kind of finish line you cross where work stops and the money just figures itself out. Retirement today looks different for everybody. You see, every single person, retired or not, has a burn rate. That's how much money it takes to maintain your lifestyle for 30 days. And that burn rate is the enemy of every retiree, because if the income stops but expenses keep going, you are slowly bleeding your net worth dry. So let's say your burn rate is $4,000 a month. If you've got $600,000 saved, that gives you 12 and a half years of runway, assuming no emergencies, inflation, or market crashes. But let's say you build a system that generates $3,500 a month in cash flow. Suddenly, that $600K needs to cover only $500 a month in deficit, which means it could last decades longer or not be touched at all. So here's the truth that nobody tells you. You don't need millions to retire. You just need your income to cover your burn rate. Retirement is about removing the need to work by designing a system that pays you even if you don't show up. Net worth tells you how wealthy you look. Cash flow tells you how free you actually are. You know, they're basically two faces of the same coin. That's it for today's story. Want more? Head over to the channel and dive into our other videos. Until then, stay sharp, stay focused, and keep building your finance mindset.